All right. Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Tonight is Thursday, August 26th, 2021. This is your evening tropical update, where tonight we continue to largely focus on what is now Tropical Storm Ida. So, we had a quick update video this morning that Tropical Depression 9 had formed. If you're just tuning in from last night, we talked about the timeline. It was probably going to be accelerated a little bit. We did get Tropical Depression 9 at 11 a.m. this morning. This afternoon, hurricane hunters flew the storm just after the 5 p.m. update from the Hurricane Center. They did find tropical storm force winds, so we have our ninth named storm of the 2021 season, which is Ida. And again, this system expected to track over the western tip of Cuba, get into the Gulf of Mexico, and become a significant hurricane with a strike somewhere on the northern Gulf Coast, likely Louisiana, coming sooner than later. So this is going to be pretty fast, with a lot of forecast changes and updates today. We're going to get into them. We're going to come back and talk about the rest of the tropics back at the end of the video, but most of this will be on Ida tonight. So, Hurricane Center's 5 p.m. forecast update. Again, this says TD9, but this is quickly updated to Tropical Storm Ida. So, the winds, the only difference is 35 to 40 miles an hour. That movement slow to the northwest at 14 miles per hour. Center of the storm just kind of off to the west of Jamaica, a little south of the Cayman Islands tonight. So the 5 p.m. Hurricane Center forecast cone is largely unchanged from the 11 a.m. The general track theory is not going to change much. We're pretty much going to have this steady northwest motion up until about landfall, when it'll begin to turn. The only question really is exactly where the center comes ashore. Landfall ranges are anywhere from Eastern Louisiana to a little bit on either side. Your goalposts really probably are, Mississippi Alabama border all the way back to the Louisiana border with Texas, although models are continuing to lock into the middle of this forecast track, which looks like a central or eastern Louisiana landfall somewhere around the boot of Louisiana, which would bring the heaviest weather into parts of eastern Louisiana, especially New Orleans, and also a lot of folks in Mississippi, even further out, Alabama and the western Florida panhandle on that sort of track could also experience heavy rain, storm surge, winds, etc. Let's go ahead and look at the satellite presentation of the storm this evening. And the big thing to note is that the center of the circulation is a little bit further south of where the mid-level circulation is. So hurricane hunters found the center earlier right in this region. This is where the surface low likely is. This is forming on kind of the end of the trough. You have some strong southerly winds and then some northerly winds. You kind of have what earlier you had this like envelope, broad low level rotation, and what you've got this evening is tightening up of that along the northern side, much closer to where the thunderstorm activity largely is. But the mid-level center is a bit further to the north, so you kind of got this sort of thing going on where your low and mid-level centers are a little misaligned, so you've got some tilt with height from the southwest to the northeast. So this is common with the vortex. When the storm is forming, you often get thunderstorm activity gets churned up by some processes outside of the storm's ability, and then you've got a low forming elsewhere, and then these two centers have to align. Elsewhere on the water vapor satellite imagery, we can see a couple things. Notably, the first one is that outflow is quickly improving. Notice the edge of the cirrus shield here, marching quickly into the edge of Cuba, and also cirrus outflow already extending into parts of Florida. Clouds are very harmless or in the upper levels, but what you do see is that although your center is right here, you've got beautiful outflow in two quadrants, which is again classic appearance of a storm with plenty of outflow and plenty of light winds aloft to fuel intensification. This upper level low over the Gulf of Mexico is backing away and it's weakening. So you can see the wind flow across Central America and Yucatan, and then it kind of turns northward. But this wind is turning more and more backwards. And as the day goes on, you've got this lid, this kind of like imagine a pot lid over the storm, and it's kind of holding it down. But the pot lid is starting to open. And by tomorrow, this pot lid is going to be completely open, and all that boiling water, which in this analogy would be the storm, is going to rise and open up. So definitely not something you want to see. These twin outflow channels are really impressive, and you also have some spiral banding beginning evening. Microwave passes indicate a couple spiral bands starting to form with this system, so it's got some look to it that is going to quickly intensify. So let's go ahead and show you the Hurricane Hunter passes. Were two passes through this evening at 1,006 millibars. Nothing super impressive yet. Hurricane hunters are going to come back a little bit later, take another look at this, but generally most of the tropical storm force winds are on that northern edge under the strongest thunderstorm activity, pretty common, so no too big of a surprise. So what's the next question for this system? Well, the next question is the short term, and that's really from the Cayman Islands and Jamaica, where the storm is tonight, to this approach to the western tip of Cuba tomorrow. The question is, how much intensification do we get right here, and how fast does the storm fully steadily center and organized. The HWRF model shows this pretty well. What we have tonight, this is the mid-level winds and low-level sea level pressure. So the winds on this map, the wind barbs are showing you the mid-level rotation, which on this map, this is set for this evening, is going to be right here. And you can see that displacement with the low level center stamped at 1001 millibars. And again, that same southwest and northeast tilt that you just saw on satellite. So the HWRF model sees it pretty well, although it's a couple of millibars too low, common with the HWRF, but the basic structure is the same, okay? The HWRF shows us by tomorrow morning, which is we're going to go in tomorrow morning, we have the low level center. Notice how it's pulled up under the mid level center. You kind of got this much better alignment than you did overnight, and now you've got a much more likely storm to intensify. That low and mid-level rotation needs to be pretty close together. Once they stack, imagine your top. If you spun a top and it was angled, and it was like rolling, and it was kind of like wobbling, wallering around a little bit, and then it kind of straightened up and smoothed out. That's kind of what it has to do. It has to kind of get itself aligned, and then when it does, everything kind of like sets, and then it can spin and intensify from there. Now the HWRF has this by tomorrow morning, and then it has the landfall late on tomorrow night. So the HWRF is giving this thing some significant time. And the question is, does it spin up near the Cayman Islands? Does it spin up halfway between? Does it spin up right when it gets there? Because the further away this spins up, the more time you get over this patch of warm water to get a stronger storm. Do we have a mid-grade, kind of half put together tropical storm crossing Cuba, or do we have something that's almost a hurricane crossing Cuba? Because you put a category 1 hurricane leaving Cuba into this part of the Gulf of Mexico, it's going to be bad news, really bad news. But if you can get a sloppier tropical storm between now and then, that gives you a little better chance that it's going to have to take longer to intensify. Because I tell you guys, when this leaves Cuba, now this part of Cuba is flat, it's not super disruptive, and it's also, you're crossing like the smallest part of it, so this isn't going to be this isn't Hispaniola where, oh man, the storm's ripped apart and it takes 2 days to reform. No, it's going to be a speed bump. It's just going to stop intensifying for like 6 hours. That's it. That's all you're getting out of Cuba. Cuba's not going to slow this kind of storm down. When it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, all signs are it's going to have everything it needs to intensify as fast as it wants to. All right, this is the oceanic heat content map. This is a map that not only shows water temperature, but water depth. So this is the combination of those two factors. Warm water is great, but if it's super shallow, the storm can eat it up really quick, and then it runs out of warm water. Whereas this storm is going to have very warm, deep water through Cuba, after Cuba, and then it's going to come along this, what we call the loop current, which is this current in the central Gulf of Mexico that is incredibly deep warm water, like 30 meters deep of like 86-degree water. This is not good news. This is the worst track you could possibly take, as far as the oceanic heat values are concerned. So not only does the storm have warm water to work with, but it has very deep warm water to work with. This is combined by the fact that the upper level outflow will be beautiful. This is the storm on Saturday night moving into the Gulf of Mexico, and a classic upper cyclone aloft showing that the air above the storm is breathing beautifully. There's no interruptions. The only hope we have is there should be a hurricane, which is going to be Hurricane Nora, is expected to be near the coast of Mexico on Saturday and Sunday. Hurricane watch is in effect for parts of the Mexican coastline. Maybe some of its outflow gets across and we have this little trough trying to dig in. I don't think it's going to be much, but it could be the only thing that even remotely hampers Ida. Otherwise, this upper air pattern is picture perfect. The water temperatures are picture perfect, and the moisture, again, according to the HWRF and other models, I don't see any dry air on there. Do you? There's pretty much none. So all signs are that the Gulf of Mexico will be a prime rapid intensification hotbed for this storm. The only question is, how does it look when it's leaving Cuba? Do we have a borderline hurricane already leaving Cuba, or do we have a weaker tropical storm that's got to spend this time kind of getting itself together? I think your best case scenario, this hits as an upper in category 2, low in category 3. That's what the Hurricane Center officially has forecast tonight. They have the system landfalling as a little, they have 110 on their forecast, but this is actually a little bit before landfall. So there's conceivably, some intentional intensity. You could probably go to 115, 120 before landfall. I think category 3 is probably your best bet. I don't see there's hardly any way this is not at least a category 3, and I think the potential for even stronger is higher, especially within the next day if this thing gets itself together faster. So there is a very serious concern that this will be a major hurricane strike along the U.S. Gulf Coast, and folks out there need to be getting ready, because I'm telling you, once it leaves Cuba, there's nothing in this path slowing it down, and there's a lot of things that are really going to help this thing blow up. This Hurricane Center forecast is their 72-hour intensification going from a tropical depression to a 110-mile-an-hour hurricane is the fastest 3-day intensification the Hurricane Center's ever explicitly forecast. Not the fastest we've ever seen. We've seen storms spin up faster in 3 days for sure, but they're typically not forecast outright to be that much stronger in 3 days. And this Hurricane Center track ties Iota from last year, so it's serious. The Hurricane Center is treating it serious, and if you live in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, even Eastern Texas, you should treat it serious as well, because this is going to be probably a whale of a strike, because I don't like anything I see about the storm, and I really don't see a lot of ways this thing is tripped up or slows down at all. Like I said, Cuba is not much of a detriment to the storm, and hoping that some outflow from a storm comes across and aggravates this thing, I mean, it might aggravate it, but it ain't going to stop it by any means. So this is a serious situation, guys. This threat's going to unfold fast. You see 2 p.m. on Sunday, Hurricane Center has this sitting just off the coast of Louisiana. Tropical storm force winds and heavy rain will already be on station hours before that, meaning Sunday morning is it. That's your drop time. That's the you gotta be out of town or hunker down by Sunday morning, and it's too late after that. So it's gonna be fast. Your plans are gotta get started. Preparations really tomorrow and Saturday. If you're evacuating, tomorrow is a better day than Saturday, and just get away from the coast, because the storm surge threat of the storm will be very significant, and probably be in excess of 10 or 15 feet, I would imagine. And this is some of the marshiest, swampiest land there is. That storm surge will go well inland. Folks in New Orleans need to be thinking about evacuations and movement. This might be a big test in New Orleans since Katrina. I hate to say it, but that's very possible, given this track and potential for intensity. And you're going to be, as this comes up just off to your west, you're going to be in that kind of right front quadrant of the storm. So Katrina actually passed to your east, and the backside of the storm is what kind of really punished the levee system and caused the catastrophic flooding. So it's been a long time since we had one come just east at this sort of intensity. So there's going to be a big test for this region, and a whole lot of surge coming along with it. So this is definitely going to be a big issue, and we're going to have to watch this very carefully in the coming days, guys. Again, you can see the track really starting to cluster up on that east to south or east to central sort of Louisiana coastline area. But again, you can't just focus on that center. That means a lot of folks in this region especially are going to get hammered with a really nasty hurricane. Let's go ahead and talk about the rest of your tropics, guys. So we have two other waves out here tonight, Invest 97 and 98L. Both of these are expected to develop towards the weekend. Both have a high probability from the National Hurricane Center, but thankfully they're both going to kind of move up in a way this wave is going to follow. Probably going to have 2 tropical depressions tomorrow or by Saturday, I would imagine. And then, one or more may develop a little bit further than that. One or both may be named. Really, it's a who cares, because they're way out to sea. They're way east of Bermuda, and they're not going to bother the U.S. But if we go into the week after, guys, so one of the things we gotta watch out for is the GFS is not forecasting Ida to be the last Gulf Coast hurricane in a couple days. So I don't want to hype this too much, because this is a way away. But if you look at the water vapor satellite imagery tonight, there's a big monsoon trough still occurring over the south and central and Central America, Eastern Pacific region. So you've got a lot of tropical moisture left over once Ida gets up and out of the picture, and this is probably going to sit there and fester for a couple more days. And the GFS shows yet another storm moving out of the same region and coming along the same track Ida did, with the same sort of threat to the Gulf Coast. Now, the 18Z didn't have it. It's just a general pattern. It's not saying that the same thing's going to happen at all, but it is another thing you're going to have to watch next week. This is valid September 4th. This is a week from Saturday, and we also could be seeing another strong hurricane in the Cabo Verde region and the main development region of the Atlantic to also watch. This probably recurves, but you don't know that for sure. So another storm out there. I'm telling you, there's plenty more waves off Africa. The next couple of weeks are going to be really favorable. The upper air pattern is going to be really favorable. We're probably going to have a non-stop just fiesta of storms between now and middle to late-ish September. So until then, we're going to take it one at a time. We're not going to get too crazy with it, but I'm just letting y'all know down the road there's other threats after Ida, and it's probably going to be no breaks for a couple weeks. So take them one at a time. So tonight we focus on Ida. We'll get through this, and then we'll get through the rest of the stuff as it shows up. So we'll be back tomorrow morning with more updates, guys. Until then, stay safe and have a plan. Be ready if you're in this region. And until then, have a good one.